You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you. Chapter 61. By shooting an arrow from ambush, Yanqing saves the life of his master. Shirxiu jumps from an upper room and saves life on the execution ground. When Lu Junyi was thrown overboard, he was rescued by Zhang Shun, who brought him to the bank, where there were many men with torches who seized Lu Junyi, disarmed him, removed his wet clothes, and were going to bind his hand with ropes. Just then Dai Zong appeared and called out, "Do not injure Lu Junyi in any way." He took some new embroidered clothes from a man and handed them to Lu Junyi. A sedan chair was there, and Lu Junyi was asked to take his seat in same. In the distance were about 40 men with red silk lanterns illuminated and beating drums who were to conduct Lu Junyi to the mountain. With them were Song Jiang, Wu Yong, Gong Sunsheng, and all the other leaders. When near, the chair was set down, and Lu Junyi got out. The leaders all dismounted and knelt down. Lu Junyi also knelt down and said, "I am your prisoner, and request a quick dispatch." Song Jiang laughed and replied, "Sir, I request you to be seated in the chair." Lu Junyi did this, and all the leaders again mounted their horses. They then all moved off up the mountain, and upon halting before the Loyalty and Justice Hall, Song Jiang pressed Lu Junyi to enter the hall. There was a blaze of lanterns on all sides. In the hall, Song Jiang addressed Lu Junyi, "I have heard of your fame for a long time, and today I am gratified to be fortunate enough to meet you. I am afraid that we have annoyed you just now, and I ask you to forgive us." "I was instructed by our commander," said Wu Yong, "to go to your house as a fortune teller, and by some means get you to come and join us here." Song Jiang requested Lu Junyi to occupy the second seat of honor, but the latter only laughed and said, "At home I had no conduct deserving capital punishment, and now here I do not think of living. You want to kill me, then kill me at once. Do not joke with me." Song Jiang laughed, "How dare I joke with you? Your virtue is abundant, and we have been longing for a long time to meet you. So we thought out a plan to get you to come here, and now we will obey your orders." "Stay," said Lu Junyi. "For me to die is easy, but to follow your wishes is very difficult." "We had better discuss matters further tomorrow," said Wu Yong. Food and wine were now brought in, and they all sat down. Lu Junyi saw no way of avoiding this, so he ate and drank with the rest, and then was conducted to a bedroom. The next day a feast was prepared, and Song Jiang pressed Lu Junyi to join them. When they entered the hall, Lu Junyi was pressed to take the premier seat. During the feast, Song Jiang stood up, filled Lu Junyi's cup with wine, and then said, "Last night we spoke rather abruptly, and now ask you to forgive us. Though our stronghold is small, and is not a suitable place for a great man, yet I ask you look at that inscription, Loyalty and Justice, and become our commander-in-chief, and I will make room for you." "Tut, tut," exclaimed Lu Junyi. "You are wrong. I have committed no fault. Whether I live or die, I shall still be loyal to the great Song dynasty. I would prefer to die than to join you." "If you are unwilling to join us," said Wu Yong, "we cannot force you to do so. We might detain your body, but we could not keep your spirit. Only it has been very difficult for us to get you come here. If you will not join us, we hope that you will stay with us for at least a few days." "As you cannot keep me here, why should you not let me leave at once?" asked Lu Junyi. "I am afraid that my people at home will be very much upset at not hearing of me." "That can be easily arranged," said Wu Yong. "We can send your steward Li Gu back with your carts and goods so that you can rest here for a few days." He then summoned Li Gu, and upon his arrival asked him, "Have you got all your goods and carts?" "There are none missing," replied Li Gu. Song Jiang sent for some silver and distributed it among Li Gu and his subordinates. Lu Junyi then spoke to Li Gu, "You know all my trouble. I want you to tell my wife everything, and urge her not to be downcast. If I am not killed here, I will certainly come back." "The men here like you," said Li Gu, "so that it won't matter if you stay here for 1 or 2 months." He and his men then withdrew. Sir, I hope that you will make yourself at home here, said Wu Yong. I will go and see that Li Gu departs without any difficulty. He then left the hall, mounted his horse, and went down the mountain to wait for Li Gu. When he met him he said, Li Gu, we have settled everything with your master, and he has agreed to occupy the second seat in our assembly. While he was at home he wrote on the wall of a room a poem of 28 characters, 7 in each line, and along the top of the 4 lines are 4 characters, Lu Juni rebels. The poem is as follows. On bank a gallant hero strolls. His boat is hidden in the reeds. A long sword he holds. To kill the traitorous ministers. Today your master has arrived here, but you do not understand the reason. He asked us to kill all you men so that nobody would know where he was, but that would represent us heroes at Liangshan Marsh as being unjust. So you can now return and tell his people that he will never come back. Li Gu and his men saluted. Wu Yong got a boat, and the party was rowed across the lake. Wu Yong took leave of them, and they departed on their way to the northern capital. The next day another feast was held in the Loyalty and Justice Hall, and there Lu Junyi spoke, As you have not killed me yet my stay here seems very long. Today I must take my leave of you. I have no ability, said Song Jiang, but today I am aware of your greatness. Tomorrow I will arrange a private feast for us two, then we can discuss matters fully. I must ask you not to decline the invitation. The next day Song Jiang gave the feast, and the day afterwards Wu Yong also had a special private feast for Lu Junyi. Then Gong Sunxing did the same, and he was followed by all the other 30 leaders, so that Lu Junyi had a special feast every day for a whole month. At last Lu Junyi decided to depart at all costs, and Song Jiang agreed to this. He arranged for a parting feast, and drank wine with Lu Junyi. But the other leaders complained because Lu Junyi would not also drink wine with them. They used the proverb, why is the brick thick and the tile thin, i.e., why do you treat him intimately and treat us coldly? Li Kuei also called out, I went through a lot of trouble in my journey to and from the northern capital to induce him to come here, but now he would not drink a parting cup with me. Let me fight with him to settle the affair. Wu Yong laughed at this, but pointed out to Lu Junyi how much he was liked. At last Lu Junyi agreed to stay 5 days more. But after that he was again induced to stay until nearly another month had passed. It was then near the end of autumn, and the days were getting cold. At last Lu Junyi spoke personally to Song Jiang about his departure, but the latter only laughed and said, this can be easily arranged. I will accompany you across the lake tomorrow. The next day Lu Junyi put on his sword and clothes for journey, and all the bandit leaders came down the mountain to see him off. He accepted from them only enough money to cover his expenses on the way. Lu Junyi had no adventure on his journey, and duly reached the northern capital. As it was evening when he arrived he decided to pass the night in an inn just outside the gate. The next morning he entered the city, and happened to meet a man who had a tattered turban and shabby clothes. Upon seeing Lu Junyi he began to cry. Upon looking at the man closely he recognized him as his employee Yan Qing, and therefore asked him what was the matter. This is no place to talk, replied Yan Qing. So they both went off the road to a quiet corner where Yan Qing said, sometime after you had gone Li Gu returned and told your wife that you had joined the brigands at Liangshan Marsh, and had become the second in command. So they both went to the yamen, and made an accusation against you. They then went away and lived together. As I objected to that arrangement they dismissed me, and then prevented me from getting other employment, so that I have been reduced to begging for a bare living. I knew that you would not join the brigands, and therefore waited here for your return. Now if you will take my advice you will at once return to Liangshan Marsh, because if you stay here there will be danger for you. My wife is not the kind of woman who would do such a thing, replied Lu Junyi. As you have no eyes at the back of your head, said Yan Qing, how could you know what has happened here? Previously you were so engaged in your military drills that you had no time for your wife's desires, and it was at that time that your wife had Li Gu as her lover. They now live together as man and wife, and if you interfere there it will lead you to trouble. Lu Junyi was angry and said, "Our family has been in this town for 5 generations, and I am well known here. I know Li Gu dares not do this kind of thing. I think you may be deceiving me for some reason. I will go myself to make inquiries at my home, and then I will deal with you." Yanqing cried again, and seized hold of Lu Junyi's clothes, but the latter kicked him, and getting free he hurried off towards his home. Upon arriving there all the servants were surprised to see him. Li Gu hurried forward, saluted, and requested him to enter the main hall. Lu Junyi asked for Yanqing, and Li Gu replied, "That is a long story, and you had better not ask about him just now. You just take a rest and then I will tell you all about him." Just then Lu Junyi's wife stepped from behind the screen, and he spoke to her, "How do you do, wife? Now can you tell me about Yanqing?" His wife replied, "You need not ask, as that is a long story. You may take a rest and then I will tell you all about him." Lu Junyi was now very suspicious, and wanted to pursue his inquiries about Yanqing. But Li Gu said, "Please change your clothes, then worship at your ancestral tablets, get your breakfast, and then we can discuss matters fully." He then went and ordered the food. As Lu Junyi sat down to eat there arose a great noise at the gates, and about 200 yamen aides entered. They seized Lu Junyi, bound him, and took him off to the yamen, beating him on the way with their staves. The commander-in-chief of the garrison, Grand Secretary Liang, took his seat on the bench. Lu Junyi was taken in front of the bench, and the yamen aides stood in ranks on both sides. Li Gu and Lu Junyi's wife had also arrived, and they knelt down at one side. Grand Secretary Liang addressed the prisoner in a loud voice, "How is it that you, a highly respected citizen of Daming Prefecture, the northern capital, went and joined the brigands at Liangshan Marsh and became second in command there? Do you now return to the northern capital to devise schemes to attack us with the brigands? What explanation have you to offer?" "I was rather stupid," replied Lu Junyi. "One of the brigand leaders, Wu Yong, came to my house in the disguise of a fortune teller. He instigated me to go to Liangshan Marsh, where I was kept as a prisoner for 2 months. By lucky chance I escaped and returned home here. Really I have had no bad intentions. I request that you go into this matter fully." "It is useless for you to say you have no bad intention," said the Grand Secretary Liang. "If you were not on very intimate terms with the brigands, how could you stay there for 2 months? The accusation against you was made by your own wife and your steward Li Gu. It cannot be false." "Master," said Li Gu, "if I were you I would make a full confession. On the wall of a room at your house we found a rebellious poem, so that it is useless trying to hide anything." "We do not wish to injure you," said Lu Junyi's wife, "but we are afraid of being implicated. There is a saying, if one man rebels, his family is exterminated." Lu Junyi felt deeply wronged, knelt down, and denied the accusation. "Master, do not deny the charge," said Li Gu. "If you now speak the truth you may get off more easily than if you speak falsely. If you do not confess very soon they will force a confession by torture." The wife also said, "Husband, if there was nothing definite you would not be here, and if you speak the truth it will be easier to get your release. If you have done this, my own life will be endangered. Your flesh is sensitive, but the bamboo has no feelings. If you confess you will only be punished according to the law." As Li Gu had bribed all the officials high and low, so the clerk of the court Zhang addressed the bench, "This is an obstinate man, and he will not confess without torture." "That is so," said the Grand Secretary. He then gave an order for the accused to be beaten. The court aides seized the prisoner, forced him on the ground, and beat him on the buttocks with the bamboo until blood flowed freely. Lu Junyi fainted several times. He could not endure this torture, and at last said, "My fate is evidently to meet with an untimely death, so I will now confess." The clerk of the court wrote down his confession, and afterwards the accused had a king fastened round his neck, and was sent to the prison. Most of the public present considered that the prisoner had merely confessed in order to escape further torture. In the prison Lu Junyi was in charge of a jailer Kai Fu, nicknamed the Iron Arm, who had his younger brother, Kai Qing, nicknamed the Flower, as his assistant. Kai Fu was the chief executioner, and never took 2 strokes. His younger brother always wore a flower in his cap, hence the nicknames. Kai Fu told his younger brother to take the prisoner to a cell, as he wished to go home. This was done. As Kai Fu left the prison, he was accosted by a man at the door who was crying and also carrying a can of food. Kai Fu recognized him as Yan Qing and asked what he was doing. Yan Qing knelt down with his tears falling to the ground like pearls and beans. He said, "Elder brother, I ask you to have pity on my master Lu Junyi, as he was innocent, although now a prisoner. I have been begging for food, and have now brought a little for him. Do not refuse me." He could not control his sorrow or say another word, but burst into tears. Kai Fu replied, "I know about the case. You can go inside and give the prisoner the food." Yan Qing saluted and entered the jail. Kai Fu went on his way, but soon met a tea boy who called out, "There is a guest in our tea house who wishes to speak to you." Kai Fu went upstairs with the man, and found Li Gu waiting for him. After saluting each other, Li Gu spoke, "You know all about my affairs, so I will not attempt to deceive you. Tonight I want you to extinguish his life. I wish to present you 50 taels of silver for this. If the officials make inquiries, I will square them." Kai Fu laughed and said, "Have you not noticed the stone tablet on the wall of the court with the inscription, 'It is easy to deceive persons, but difficult to deceive heaven'? You may deceive yourself, but you may be sure that I shall know all about it. You have got hold of his wealth, and also his wife, and now you offer me a bribe to kill him. If I commit a crime, I shall suffer for it when it is discovered. You think 50 taels are too small, so I will double that amount," replied Li Gu. "Li Gu," said Kai Fu, "you cut off the cat's tail, and then mix it with the cat's food. Lu Junyi is a very wealthy man, and your offer is not enough. I might do it, however, for 500 taels. "I have the money here," said Li Gu, "and I will hand it to you, if you will kill him this very night." Kai Fu took the money, hid it in his clothes, and then said, "You come early tomorrow morning for the corpse." Li Gu thanked him, saluted, and took his departure. Kai Fu went on his way, and upon reaching his home was met at the entrance by a man, who was good-looking, well-dressed, with a jeweled belt and embroidered silk shoes. They saluted each other, and then Kai Fu asked for the man's name and business. "Let us go inside and then we can talk," replied the man. They did so, and took their seats in a small private room. "Do not be alarmed at what I say," commenced the man. "I am a Henghai County man, and my name is Chai Jin. I am a descendant of the emperor of later Zhou dynasty, and I am known as the Small Whirlwind. I am just and upright and distribute wealth in good cause. By a misfortune I committed a crime, and therefore had to fly for safety to Liangshan Marsh. Our commander there is Song Jiang, who instructed me to come here and watch carefully the affairs of Lu Junyi. Who could know that the venal officials, avaricious subordinates, an adulterous wife, and a fornicating villain would join together to injure an innocent man? You hold the life of the innocent man in your hand. I have come to see about this matter, and have scorned the danger I run in doing so. If the prisoner survives, we shall never forget your virtue. If the slightest error occurs in this matter, then, when the heroes of Liangshan Marsh enter this city, they will kill everyone, whether good or bad, young or old. We have heard that you are a very upright man, so I will present you 1,000 taels of silver. If you wish to arrest me, please do so, and I will not resist you." Kai Fu, while listening to this, was covered with goose flesh, and was so paralyzed that he could not utter a word. So Squire Chai Jin continued, "Sir, do not hesitate, but give me an immediate answer." "I request you, sir, to go back," replied Kai Fu. "I will arrange matters as you wish." "As you agree to do this, I will see that you are duly recompensed," said Squire Chai Jin. He then took the money from his companion, who was standing outside the gate, and handing it to Kai Fu, took his leave. Kai Fu was undecided what to do in view of what Squire Chai Jin had said. He however returned to the jail, and told his younger brother what had passed. His brother said, You generally have no difficulty in deciding what to do, and as this is only a small matter, where is the difficulty? There is a saying, in killing a man we must see his blood, in saving a man, we must save him out of trouble. As we have 1,000 taels of silver, we can make presents to our superior and inferior men in his name. Both Grand Secretary Liang and Clerk Zhang are fond of bribes, and they can be bought to spare the life of Lu Junyi. We can easily arrange for him to be banished to another place, and so avoid trouble from Liangshan Marsh. What you say is just what I think, said Kai Fu. Take Lu Junyi and put him in a decent cell, and see that he has good food and wine. You can also tell him what has happened. The money was duly distributed among the various officials, and the matter was explained to them. The following day, as Li Gu got no further news, he went to Kai Fu's house to find out the reason. Kai Qing, the younger brother, was at home, and he told Li Gu, "We wanted to get rid of the prisoner as you proposed, but unfortunately we got orders from Grand Secretary Liang that the prisoner's life must be saved. So you had better go to the Grand Secretary and bribe him. As soon as he issues orders to us, our work will soon be done." Li Gu sent another man to bribe the officials, and an intermediary reported that the Grand Secretary declined to have anything to do with killing the prisoner. But perhaps after a few days the prisoner might commit suicide. Clerk Zhang had been bribed by Kai Fu, so he put up the case purposely. Kai Fu also urged him that something should be done at once, and Clerk Zhang consulted Grand Secretary Liang as to how the case should be dealt with. They had a clear accusation, but there was little proof of the crime. Though he stayed at Liangshan Marsh for some time, there was no evidence that he was really a bandit. We can beat him, and then banish him to some place about 300 li away. What do you think of that? The Grand Secretary agreed to this proposal, so sentence was made that Lu Junyi was to receive 40 blows with the bamboo, to have a smaller keng, and be banished to Shaman Island. This was done, and Lu Junyi was placed in charge of an escort of 2 men, Dong Chao and Shui Ba. Now these men were the same who had tried to kill Lin Chong when on his journey of banishment, but were prevented by Lu Da. Upon receipt of the signed order, they took charge of Lu Junyi, and placed him temporarily in a small room, while they went home to get their traveling kit ready. Li Gu heard of the new arrangement, and sent a messenger to request Dong Chao and Shui Ba to come and see him before starting off. They duly met Li Gu in an inn where they all sat down in a private room to eat some food and drink wine. After drinking 3 cups of wine, Li Gu spoke to them, "I will be straight with you. Lu Junyi is my enemy. He has no money now, and on this long journey to Shaman Island you will have to pay all the expenses yourself. It will be at least 3 months before you can get back. Just now I have only these 2 ingots of silver to give you. If, however, when on the way you kill the prisoner, and upon your return you show me the skin bearing his brand mark, then I will give each of you 50 taels of silver. Then you can bring a report back that the prisoner died on the way, and I will fix matters up all right for you at the yamen." Dong Chao and Shui Ba looked at each other, and then Dong Chao replied, "I am afraid this is hard for us to do." But Shui Ba said, "Our friend Li Gu is a well-known man, has a good name, and perhaps we can do this thing for him. If there is any difficulty he can arrange matters for us. I am not ungrateful, and I can certainly compensate you well," said Li Gu. So Dong Chao and Shui Ba took the money, went home for their baggage, and departed that night with the prisoner. They placed their baggage on Lu Junyi's keng. They treated the prisoner very harshly on the way. Towards evening of the second day they had gone about 5 li, and they stopped at an inn, just on the outskirts of a forest. They were shown by the waiter into a room at the back, and Shui Ba spoke to Lu, "We are minor officials, so how can we wait upon you? If you want a meal you must go and cook it yourself." So Lu Junyi went into the kitchen, and getting some fuel from the waiter he lit the fire. The waiter also gave him clean rice to boil. But as Lu Junyi had been brought up in a wealthy family, he did not know how to cook food. The fire he had lit soon went out, and upon his blowing the embers to revive the flame he got the ashes in his eyes. Dong Chao was annoyed at the delay, and cursed him. When the rice was cooked, Dong Chao took it all away, and Lu Junyi dared not even ask for some. When they had finished there was a little left which they gave to Lu Junyi, but it was cold. Shueba now told Lu Junyi to boil some water to wash their feet. When he had done this, Lu Junyi went into a room and sat down. When they had finished they filled a tub full of very hot water, and summoned Lu Junyi to come and wash his feet. When he had taken off his shoes they seized his legs, and thrust both feet into the boiling water. He shrieked with the pain. Shueba said, "We wait upon you but you are so fastidious." They took a chain and fastened Lu Junyi to the door. They then went to sleep. About 3 a.m. they got up, and called for the waiter to get their breakfast ready. When they had dined they picked up their bundles to leave the inn. Lu Junyi saw that his feet were all scalded, and he could not walk outside. It was raining heavily, and the path slippery. Lu Junyi attempted to walk, but fell down. Shueba took a stick and thrashed him. Lu Junyi struggled on, while they cursed him. They had gone about 3 li like this when they came to a forest, and Lu Junyi said, "I cannot really go any further, and I hope you will take pity on me, and allow me to rest here." They agreed to this, and they all entered the forest. It was now daybreak, and there were no people about. Shueba said, "We got up very early this morning, and as we are a bit tired we will rest here. We would like to sleep, but are afraid that you will try to escape." "Even if I had wings I could not get away just now," said Lu Junyi. "We will not trust you," said Shueba, "and will tie you up." He took a hempen cord from around his waist, and tied Lu Junyi to a pine tree. He then asked Dong Chao to act as sentry some distance away, and to cough if he saw anyone coming. "Brother, please get it done as quickly as possible," said Dong Chao. Shueba took his stick, and said to Lu Junyi, "You must not think ill of us, but your steward, Li Gu, asked us to kill you on the way. In any case you would soon have died at Shaman Island, so it would be better if you died here. When you get to the afterlife do not blame us." Lu Junyi wept, but did not speak a word. Shueba lifted the stick to strike Lu Junyi on the head, when Dong Chao at his post heard a noise, and assumed that the deed had been done. He hurried back to see the result, and there Lu Junyi was still tied to the tree, but evidently none the worse. Shueba, however, was lying at the foot of the tree, and his stick was some distance away. "How strange," said Dong Chao. "You must have overexerted yourself, and so have fainted." He stooped down to raise his companion, but could not move him. He now saw blood issuing from Shueba's mouth, and looking more closely he saw an arrow sticking in Shueba's breast. He was startled at this, and quickly looking round espied a man sitting in a tree. At the same moment the man shot an arrow, which struck Dong Chao in the neck, and he fell down dead. The man jumped down from the tree, and taking his sword cut the cord binding Lu Junyi to the tree. When Lu Junyi opened his eyes he saw that the man was Yan Qing, his servant, and exclaimed, "You! Surely we are both dead, and are now both spirits." "I have followed you all the way from the town," said Yan Qing, "because I thought that they would try to murder you. But I have succeeded in killing them. See, here they are." "You saved my life," said Lu Junyi, "but you have killed those yamen guards so that I am now implicated in a serious crime. Where can we go?" "Song Jiang certainly did you an injury when he tricked you into leaving your home, but now there is no other place than Liangshan Marsh for us to go to. But I am still suffering from the beatings I got in the prison, and my feet were scalded, so how can I walk, or go anywhere?" said Lu Junyi. "We cannot delay matters, so I will carry you on my back." Yan Qing was feeling very perturbed. He kicked the corpses aside, and then took Lu Junyi on his back, and started off in an easterly direction. But after going about 3 li like this Yan Qing felt tired, and therefore he stopped at an inn for the night. Now it happened that some travelers passing near the forest saw the 2 corpses, and told the chief at the next village, who reported the matter to the officials at Daming, the northern capital. When the coroner arrived he recognized Shueba and Dong Chao. The officials duly issued an order for the arrest of the murderer within a fixed time. Upon examining the arrows it was found out that they belonged to Yan Qing, so another proclamation was issued giving description of that man, and also Lu Junyi, and ordering their immediate arrest. Lu Junyi and Yan Qing were now staying at an inn. The waiter at the inn heard of the murder, and as everybody was talking about it, he had suspicions about them. So he went to the village and told the chief there, who sent a report at once to the local yamen. As Yan Qing had no dish for the meal, he took his bow and arrows and went out to shoot some birds. As he was returning to the inn, he heard a hubbub in the village, so he hid in some trees to see what was happening. Soon he saw a large number of police with a cart on which Lu Junyi was bound a prisoner again. Yan Qing's first desire was to rush out and rescue Lu Junyi, but he realized that this would be useless as he was not well armed. So he thought, the only way now is for me to go to Liangshan Marsh and beg Song Jiang to come and rescue Lu Junyi. So he started off at once and traveled all that night. He was very hungry, as he had not a cash to buy food. He crossed a ridge, but as the trees were very dense he could not find his way very well, so he lay down among the bushes and slept there. At daybreak he was aroused by a magpie chattering in a tree just over his head. He thought, if I shoot that bird I can take it into a village and get it cooked. When he got up, the magpie, seeing him, began to chatter again. He took his bow and an arrow, and prayed to heaven, I have only one arrow, but this shot must hit the bird if my master is to live. If my master's fate is death, then this shot will fail. He fixed the arrow and addressed it. Dart, do not fail. He pulled the string, and the arrow flew and hit the magpie's tail. The bird flew away towards the foot of the ridge with the arrow sticking in its tail. Yan Qing ran in the direction the bird had gone, but instead of seeing the magpie he ran into two men. The first man wore a cap, in the shape of a pig's snout, and had two rings hanging from the cap at the back of his head. He wore a brown silk gown, and an engraved metal girdle. His cloth boots came up to his knees. He carried a long staff. The second man wore a big broad-brimmed cloth cap and a tea-colored gown. His belt was red and contained pockets for money, etc. He had leather boots. He carried a bundle on his back, a small stick in his hand, and a sword in his belt. Yan Qing passed the two men close by before he could stop. He looked round and thought, why should I not attack these men, and take their money, and so have enough to take me to Liangshan Marsh? He stuck his bow in his clothes, and turned on the men. The two men, however, seeing his action, went on as before. Yan Qing pursued them, and upon catching up, struck one in his back with his fist, and knocked him down. The other man, however, took his stave, and swinging it struck Yan Qing on the leg so that he fell down. Before he could get up, the other man put his foot on Yan Qing's back, drew his sword to kill him. At this, Yan Qing called out, Good sir, I do not mind death, but I ask you to have pity on me, as there would be no man to carry the news. The man stayed his hand, and asked what the news was. Why do you ask for the news? Asked Yan Qing. The man seized hold of Yan Qing's arm, and seeing the tattoo marks asked, Are you not Yan Qing, the employee of Lu Junyi? Yan Qing was face to face with death, so he thought, as these men know me, I had better tell them the whole truth. He replied, Yes, I am Yan Qing. The man said, It was very lucky that we did not kill you. Do you not recognize us? We are from Liangshan Marsh. I am Yang Xiong and this man is Shirxiu. We were deputed to come here and find out what has happened to Lu Junyi. Wu Yong and Dai Zong will come very soon. Yan Qing then told them all that had happened. Yang Xiong said, As that is the position, I must go at once to Liangshan Marsh with Yan Qing and ask for instructions. Meanwhile, Shirxiu had better go to Daming and watch what happens there. Shirxiu agreed to this and gave Yan Qing some of their spare food and also his bundle. They went their separate ways. When Shirxiu reached Daming, it was just dark, and as the gates were closed he could not enter that night, so he slept at an inn outside the gate. Early the next morning after breakfast he entered the city, and found the people very depressed about something. When he reached the marketplace he asked an old man whether there had been any trouble. The man replied, Stranger, do you not know about the case of Lu Junyi? Today he is to be beheaded about noon, so that you can see the affair. When Shirxiu heard this his blood ran cold. He went to the place of execution and entered an inn overlooking the ground. There he sat down and ordered wine and food. The waiter asked, "Are you alone, or have you invited others to join you here?" Shirshio was now very angry and shouted, "Bring me large bowls of wine and plenty of food. Don't ask stupid questions." The waiter was startled at this gust of temper, but hurried off, and soon brought the refreshments. Shirshio quickly ate a hearty meal, but just as he had finished he heard a row down below. Looking out of the window he saw that all the shops were closing doors. Just then the waiter entered, and asked if he had had enough and said, "An execution is taking place, so would you please pay now and leave?" "What should I be afraid of?" asked Shirshio. "You get off at once before I hit you." The waiter beat a hasty retreat. Soon afterwards drums and gongs were sounded in the street below, and looking out again Shirshio saw Lu Junyi being taken to the execution ground, which was just in front of the inn where he was. The head jailer Kai Fu was there with his executioner's sword, and also his brother Kai Qing, who spoke to Lu Junyi, "You must understand that it is not us who do not try to help you, but you have done wrong. Over there is a temple, and we have prepared there a proper seat for your soul to rest there in peace." The crowd standing round now called out, "It is well afternoon now." So Kai Qing took off the kang, and held the prisoner's head in position. Kai Fu raised the sword to strike the deadly blow. The clerk held aloft the sentence and read it aloud. The waiting crowd gasped in anticipation. Shirshio, now drawing out his sword, shouted out, "All the brigands from Liangshan Marsh are here," and jumped down to the ground. Upon hearing and seeing this, Kai Fu and Kai Qing deserted. Shirshio killed every man within reach, and in no time 10 men lay on the ground. He seized Lu Junyi and took him off down the south street. Shirshio did not know the roads, and Lu Junyi was too dazed to notice anything. As soon as the news reached Grand Secretary Liang, he ordered all the city gates to be closed and dispatched large numbers of soldiers to search the whole city for the escaped prisoners. How could any hero escape from a city under such conditions? A man cannot burrow through earth without claws, nor fly into the sky without wings.